I sold 3 houses to save my husband's life. The day his surgery was a success, he held his ex-girlfriend's hand and told her the assets were all transferred. I wiped my tears and smiled. Then, I turned and opened the door to his surgeon's office. I thought selling our properties to save my husband was a testament to our deep love. I thought his successful surgery was a new lease on life after a nightmare. Until that day, in his hospital room, I saw him with my own eyes, holding another woman's hand, whispering softly about how to squeeze the last drop of value out of me. In that moment, my heart died completely. But I didn't cry or scream. I just dried my tears and walked toward the head surgeon's office. As I pushed open the door, I knew this war had just begun. My name is Sarah, and I'm 35 years old. The man lying in the premium care suite, just pulled back from the brink of death, is my husband, Scott. A week ago, he suffered an acute myocardial infarction complicated by severe heart failure. The doctor said he needed an immediate heart transplant, or he wouldn't last 3 days. The cost of the surgery, plus the subsequent immunosuppressant therapy, was an astronomical figure. We didn't have that kind of money. In our 7 years of marriage, we'd run a small but decent construction supply company. Business was up and down, and most of what we earned was reinvested. Our liquid cash was limited. Scott's parents were retired teachers with modest savings. My own parents passed away years ago, leaving me with no one to lean on. The only assets we could liquidate quickly were the 3 properties in our names. One was our family home in the suburbs where we lived. Another was a condo we'd bought in a top-rated school district for our son, Leo. The last was a small studio apartment downtown that we rented out as an investment. Sell them. Sell them all. I said it, without a moment's hesitation, to the doctor, Scott's worried mother, Carol, and his sister, Megan. "Sarah, that's everything you two have," Carol said, grabbing my hand, her eyes welling with tears. "Mom, we can earn money back. If he's gone for good." My voice was calm, but my hands were shaking. Megan, her eyes red, patted my back. "Sarah, this is so hard on you. When Scott wakes up and finds out what you've done for him..." "He has to wake up." "He will," I interrupted, my tone resolute. For the next few days, I was a woman possessed. I contacted realtors, found cash buyers, and kept lowering the price for a quick sale. The house and the condo had mortgages. After paying off the banks, the remaining money barely covered the surgery and the first phase of treatment. The fully paid-off studio apartment was my last resort, my safety net for the long road of recovery and anti-rejection therapy ahead. When I signed the closing documents, my hand was steady. The realtor even commented on it, saying he'd never seen a woman so decisive. Only I knew that with every signature, it felt like a piece of my heart was being carved out. But then I'd think of Scott lying in the ICU, waiting for this money to save his life, and the pain seemed insignificant. He and I were college sweethearts. We'd gone from ramen noodles in a dorm room to our wedding day. We'd survived the grueling early days of starting our business. He had sworn at my father's bedside to cherish me for life. I had held him when his first business venture failed, whispering, "It's okay. We'll start over." We were the vibrant color in each other's youth, partners who supported each other through the daily grind, and the most loving parents in our son's eyes. 7 years of love, 3 houses. It was a bet I was willing and ready to make. The surgery was a success. When the head surgeon, Dr. Evans, walked out of the OR and removed his mask, he told us, "The procedure went very smoothly. The new heart is functioning well." My mother-in-law fainted on the spot. My sister-in-law burst into tears of joy. And I, leaning against the cold wall, slowly slid to the floor. All the strength drained from my body in an instant. The tears finally came not out of sadness, but out of pure, unadulterated relief and exhaustion after being wound so tight for so long. Scott was moved to the ICU for observation. I stood watch outside for 3 days and 3 nights, sleeping less than 5 hours in total. Carol and Megan urged me to go home and rest, but I shook my head. I wanted to be the first person he saw when he woke up. On the morning of the fourth day, Dr. Evans told me Scott was awake, stable, and could be moved to a private room. I practically flew down the hallway. He was lying in bed, hooked up to monitors. His face was pale, his lips chapped, but his eyes were open and clear. "Scott," I whispered, rushing to his side. I wanted to hold his hand but was afraid of hurting him. I gently touched his fingertips. My voice choked with emotion. "You're awake. You have no idea how scared I was." He looked at me, his expression complicated. He moved his lips, his voice raspy. "Sarah, you've been through a lot. It was nothing. As long as you're awake, that's all that matters." The tears streamed down my face again, this time from happiness. Carol and Megan gathered around, and the family was immersed in the joy of having him back. That afternoon, Scott was a bit stronger and could speak in short sentences. He said he was thirsty. I immediately got up to pour him some warm water, carefully moistening his lips with a cotton swab. Just then, there was a soft knock on the door. Thinking it was a nurse, I said, "Come in," without turning around. The door opened, and a familiar, expensive perfume wafted in. I instinctively looked back. A woman in a chic, cream-colored cashmere dress, with flawless makeup and a large bouquet of white lilies, stood elegantly at the door. It was Jessica, Scott's college girlfriend, the one who had dumped him in his poorest days for a trust fund kid, and who I'd heard had since gotten divorced. What was she doing here? My fingers tightened around the water glass. Jessica's gaze went straight past me to Scott on the bed. Her eyes instantly reddened. "Scott, I heard you were sick. I was worried to death," she said, her voice trembling. She walked over, placed the flowers on the nightstand, and naturally took his hand, the one without the IV. The gesture was so familiar, so practiced, as if she were the lady of the house. Scott didn't pull his hand away. He looked at her, and a faint smile even appeared on his pale face. His voice was softer than I'd heard it in years. "What are you doing here?" "I'm fine." My mother-in-law's face soured. Megan frowned and gently tugged on my sleeve. I stood frozen, the lukewarm water in the glass suddenly feeling scalding hot. Jessica finally seemed to notice me. She turned a flawless smile on her face. "Oh, Sarah, you're here too. It must have been so hard on you taking care of Scott." That Sarah was so sweet and cloying, it felt like a needle in my eardrum. I tried to smile back, but my facial muscles were stiff. "It's my duty. He's my husband." My voice sounded flat and dry, even to my own ears. Jessica just smiled, then turned back to Scott, leaning in close. In a low voice, but loud enough for all of us to hear, she said, "Scott, don't you worry about a thing. Just focus on getting better. I've already contacted the best rehabilitation center for you. Don't worry about the cost. I've taken care of everything." Scott looked at her with an intensity I hadn't seen in a long, long time. He gave a soft, That sound was like an ice pick plunging into my heart. I had sold everything we owned, backed myself into a corner, just to give him a chance to lie in this bed. And this woman, with a casual, "Don't worry about the cost," seemed to erase all my sacrifices and win his undivided, gentle attention. Carol couldn't hold back. "Jessica," she said, her tone sharp, "we appreciate the thought, but Scott has Sarah to take care of him. We're here. We won't trouble you." Jessica straightened up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, her smile still perfectly composed. "Mrs. Anderson, what are you saying? Scott and I have been friends for so many years. How could I not help now? Sarah must be exhausted. I have some free time lately. I can help out. That won't be necessary." This time it was me who spoke. My voice was quiet, but firm. "I can take care of my own husband." The atmosphere in the room turned heavy and awkward. Jessica's smile faded slightly. and a strange, unreadable look entered her eyes as she looked at me. Scott suddenly frowned as if tired and closed his eyes. Megan quickly tried to smooth things over. Okay, Scott just woke up. He needs to rest. Jessica, thanks for coming. We appreciate it. You should probably go now. Jessica didn't press. She nodded, gave Scott one last deep look, and said softly, "Rest well, Scott. I'll come see you again soon." After she left, the room was eerily quiet. My mother-in-law sighed, wanting to say something but stopping herself. Scott kept his eyes closed. I didn't know if he was really asleep. I stood there, the water in my hand long since cold. I walked over and placed the glass on the nightstand. The overpowering fragrance of the white lilies was suffocating. I looked at Scott's peaceful profile, my mind in turmoil. 7 years of marriage. At the precipice of life and death, I had bet everything to save him. When he woke up, was that gratitude in his eyes? Maybe. But why did it feel mixed with something else? Something that made my heart race with anxiety. And Jessica's appearance, his unusually gentle reaction to her. It was like a stone dropped into a stagnant pond, stirring up my deepest insecurities. No, Sarah. Don't overthink it. He just came back from the dead. He's weak. Maybe he just didn't know how to react. Maybe he was just being polite, trying not to embarrass her in front of everyone. I tried to rationalize it, to push down the suspicion that was growing like a weed. But some seeds, once they sprout, can never be buried again. I made an excuse to go get fresh water and left the room. Near the nurse's station, I stopped and leaned against the cold wall, taking deep breaths to fight back the stinging in my eyes. Don't cry, Sarah. Now is not the time to cry. You're his wife, a mother, the backbone of this family. You have to hold it together. I rubbed my face and was about to head back when I heard hushed voices coming from behind the slightly ajar door of a nearby stairwell. It was Carol and Megan. Mom, did you see the way Jessica was acting? Like she was still some little princess. Scott is married, and she's still throwing herself at him. Has she no shame? It was Megan, indignant. Carol's voice was lower, tinged with resignation. Keep your voice down. With Scott like this? Ugh, I told you back then that woman was trouble. Looked down on Scott because he was poor, then ran off with someone else. Now that she's divorced and sees his business is doing well. Doing well? Megan cut her off. The business would have gone under if Sarah hadn't been there holding everything together. Sarah sold their houses to save him, and the first thing he does when he wakes up is make eyes at that fox. Can you imagine how Sarah must feel? And what can we do about how she feels? Scott is in this state. Sarah is holding everything up. Sometimes you just have to turn a blind eye. As long as Scott's heart is still with this family. Carol's voice was full of weariness and a kind of compromise that sent a chill down my spine. Mom, how can you think like that? Is that fair to Sarah? Megan was aghast. Then what do you suggest? We go in there and start a fight? Scott just had major surgery. Can he handle that kind of stress? Sarah is a sensible girl. She'll understand. Her words were like a dull knife, slowly sawing at my heart. I understood. In my mother-in-law's eyes, my feelings, my hurt could be conveniently ignored for the sake of her son's health and the family's stability. My all-in sacrifice wasn't just for my husband's life, but also, apparently, to be taken for granted by others and met with a demand for my silent compliance. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms, the pain keeping me lucid. I didn't burst in and confront them. I just quietly turned and walked back to the room. Scott was awake, looking at his phone with a slight frown. When he saw me enter, he put it down. Sarah, about Jessica. She just came to visit, that's all. Don't read too much into it. I walked to his bedside, picked up an apple, and began to peel it, my eyes downcast. My voice was placid. I'm not. You being awake is more important than anything. The peel broke. I looked up at him and smiled, handing him the peeled apple. He smiled back and took a bite. The sunlight streamed into the room, warm and bright, but I felt a coldness seeping out from the marrow of my bones. Scott recovered quickly. The premium care suite was excellent, and he had a strong constitution. In less than 2 weeks, he was able to get out of bed and walk around slowly. During this time, Jessica visited several more times, each time with a gourmet homemade broth or expensive nutritional supplements. She was no longer as forward as the first time, but whenever she spoke to Scott, her eyes and tone held an intimacy that excluded everyone else. She would talk about their college days, telling stories I'd never heard, stories from a past that belonged only to them. Scott would usually listen quietly, occasionally adding a comment, a faint smile on his lips. Most of the time, I felt like an outsider sitting silently to the side, peeling fruit or tidying up. Carol and Megan came less often. Carol said she had things to attend to at home. Megan said her kids had final exams. I knew they were probably just avoiding this suffocatingly awkward situation. Only, I had nowhere to run. I was his wife. Legally and morally, I was the one who had to stay and care for him. One afternoon, Jessica came again, this time with a soup made from some top-grade fish maw she claimed a friend had brought back from Hong Kong. Scott, try this. It's great for healing. I simmered it for 6 hours. She cooed carefully, pouring the soup into a bowl, blowing on it to cool it, and holding the spoon to his lips. Scott took a sip from her hand. It's good. Thank you. Don't be silly, Jessica beamed. I watched them, a wave of nausea rising in my stomach. I stood up. I'm going to find Dr. Evans and ask about tomorrow's tests. Out in the hallway, I leaned against the wall, taking several deep breaths to quell the sickness. It wasn't the first time. Each time, I found an excuse to leave, to give myself a moment to breathe. I walked toward the doctor's offices. The door to one was slightly ajar, and I heard Dr. Evans talking to another physician. The heart transplant in room 18 is recovering remarkably well. His wife is incredible. I heard she sold all their properties to pay for the surgery. Yeah, you don't see that every day. But I've heard there might be something else going on, the other doctor said, lowering his voice. What do you mean? You know that woman who visits often, the very attractive one, doesn't seem to be just a friend. The nurses at the station said they saw her holding the patient's hand and crying while his wife was away. The patient was even wiping her tears. Wow. Does his wife know? Who knows? She seems calm enough. Maybe she doesn't, or maybe she does, and is pretending not to. What can she do? The guy just got his life back. Their voices faded. I stood outside the door, my entire body ice cold, my limbs numb. So, that's what was happening every time I sensibly left to give them space. Holding hands, wiping tears. What a touching, romantic scene. And I, the wife who sold everything and poured out her soul, was just a pitiful, tragic fool in everyone else's eyes. Or worse, a coward pretending not to see just to hold on to her marriage. I didn't go in to see Dr. Evans. I turned and slowly walked back to the room. I paused at the door, peering through the small glass window. Jessica was sitting where I had been, her head close to Scott's as they looked at something on his phone. Both of them were smiling. Scott's finger was gently swiping across the screen. Jessica would nod from time to time, looking up at him with an expression of pure trust and admiration. I hadn't seen that look on Scott's face in years. In the early days of our business, when I was with him at every client meeting, every networking dinner, through every crisis, he had looked at me with gratitude, dependence, and familial love. But that pure, admiring, romantic light a man has for a woman, I didn't know when it had faded. I had thought it was worn away by the trivialities of life. It hadn't been worn away. It had just been redirected. I gently pushed the door open. The two of them quickly separated. Jessica sat up straight, and Scott put his phone away, a flicker of awkwardness on his face. "Sarah, you're back. What did Dr. Evans say?" Scott asked, his tone normal. "Nothing much. Just that his recovery is going very well. A few more routine tests tomorrow." I walked to the window and pulled the curtain back a little, letting more light in, my back to them. "That's good." Jessica stood up, smoothing her dress. "Scott, you get some rest. I have some things to deal with at my company." "I'll get going." "Okay. Drive safe," Scott said. As Jessica walked to the door, she glanced back at me. Her eyes held a trace of pity and a hint of a victor's superiority. The door closed, leaving just the two of us. Silence stretched. I stared out the window at the patients and their families enjoying the sun in the garden below. Suddenly I spoke, my voice clear. "Scott, I got a cash offer for the studio apartment. It's a bit below market value, but it's immediate. I think I should sell it." That was the last safety net I had held back for his long-term care. Scott was quiet for a moment. "Okay, you handle it. It's been tough on you." "It's what I should do," I said. Another silence. "Sarah," he said suddenly. "Yes? Jessica?" "She's just enthusiastic. Don't take it to heart. This illness, it's made me realize a lot of things. Some people, some things, when they're in the past, they're in the past." He spoke slowly, as if choosing his words carefully. I turned to face him. His expression was calm, almost sincere. Before, I would have believed him, been moved by his words, felt my sacrifices were worthwhile. But now, with the doctor's conversation echoing in my ears, and the image of them huddled over the phone fresh in my mind, all I felt was a chilling irony. I know," I nodded, walked to his bed and tucked him in. "You just rest. Don't think too much." He took my hand. It was thinner than before from the illness, but still warm. "Sarah, thank you. Without you, I wouldn't have made it." He looked into my eyes, his tone genuine. If I had heard this yesterday, I might have cried. But today, my heart felt nothing. I simply pulled my hand away and smiled. "We're husband and wife." "Don't say that. I'll go wash some grapes for you." I took the fruit bowl into the bathroom, closed the door, and turned on the tap. As the water rushed, I stared at the haggard woman in the mirror with her sunken eyes and sallow complexion. She was a stranger. "Sarah, how long are you going to fool yourself? How long are you going to be the sensible one? Until he transfers all the assets to Jessica's name and kicks you to the curb? Until you're left with nothing, branded as the shrew who drove her critically ill husband to his grave?" No. I twisted the faucet shut. The woman in the mirror's eyes grew cold and hard. "Scott, you forced my hand. 7 years of marriage, I gave you my heart and soul, and in return, I get deceit and betrayal. Since you've been so ruthless, don't blame me for being heartless. That last apartment, I wasn't going to sell it. Not only that, but everything you've taken from me, I'm going to get it back with interest." I dried my hands, composed myself, and walked out with the washed grapes. "Scott, have some grapes," I said with a smile, holding them out to him, as gentle and considerate as ever. He took one. "They're so sweet," he praised. I smiled too. A flawless performance. From that day on, I remained the perfect, doting wife, but I started paying attention. I noted every subtle glance between Scott and Jessica. I noted the way his voice dropped and his eyes darted away when he took certain calls. I noted the flash of a J on his phone screen from a messaging app. One night, after he'd fallen into a deep sleep, I used his fingerprint to unlock his phone. The text messages were clean, just innocuous wellness checks from Jay. But then I saw his bank notifications. A week before his surgery, there was a $50,000 transfer to an unfamiliar account. The recipient's name was Jessica Fang. The memo line read, "Loan repayment." A loan? What kind of loan required him to transfer $50,000 to his ex-girlfriend while I was frantically selling our homes to raise money for his life-saving surgery? I secretly took a picture of the transaction. Then I opened his cloud drive. In an encrypted folder labeled Work Backups, I found several scanned documents. One was a loan agreement from a few months ago. He had, without my knowledge, used one of our company's warehouses as collateral for a $300,000 loan. That money had never entered the company's accounts. Another was the draft of a shareholder proxy agreement. It stated that a friend of his, a name I didn't recognize, would hold a 30% stake in a newly formed tech company, Auratech, on his behalf. The beneficiary's name on the draft was smudged, but I could still make out the initials J.F. Jessica Fang. The last document was a draft of a divorce settlement. The terms were brutally one-sided. Any remaining properties would go to him. Custody of our son would go to him. I was to be left with virtually nothing. The date on this draft was 1 month before he had his heart attack. Standing in the dim light of the bathroom, holding my phone, I couldn't stop shaking. It wasn't sadness. It was rage. A bone-deep chill and a devastating clarity. So, it had all started so long ago. He had been planning to kick me out all along. Even while I was running around fighting for his life, he was secretly transferring assets and planning his future with Jessica. That $50,000 wasn't a loan repayment. It was probably a down payment on their new life. And that $300,000 loan? Had it become the seed money for Auratech? And I, like a complete and utter fool, was still selling houses for him, praying for him, bleeding myself dry for him. I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood just to keep myself from screaming. Don't panic, Sarah. If you confront him now, you have no hard evidence. You'll just tip him off. You have to be calm. You need to gather more proof. I exited the cloud drive, deleted the access history, and carefully placed his phone back where it was. Lying on my side of the bed, I stared at the ceiling, sleepless all night. A clear, cold plan began to form in my mind. Scott, Jessica, you want your happy ending built on the ashes of my life. You want to squeeze me dry. In your dreams, I will make you spit out every last thing you've swallowed, bones and all. Scott's discharge date was set for 3 days later. His mother called, overjoyed, saying she'd cook a big meal to welcome him home. Scott seemed to be in high spirits too, texting with Jessica more frequently. Though he still tried to hide it, the lightness in his eyes and the occasional hint of anticipation gave him away. He probably thought the worst was over, and a new life was about to begin, a life built on my selfless sacrifice and Jessica's tender care. And I, in their eyes, was probably just a used rag about to be thrown away, a rag that had even cleaned and folded itself neatly. The day before his discharge, Jessica came again. This time, she brought a fancy gift bag instead of soup. Scott, you're going home tomorrow. I bought you a new outfit to wear. You should look sharp. She handed him the bag with a sweet smile. Scott took it and glanced at the tag. An expensive international brand. He frowned slightly. This is too much. Don't be silly. I'm happy when you look good, Jessica chided, giving him a look that could melt butter. I was busy packing his things, pretending not to see or hear. Sarah, Jessica said, turning the conversation to me, her tone a mix of showing off and testing the waters. Look at this sweater. Don't you think Scott will look great in it? This used to be his favorite brand, but back then we couldn't afford it. I straightened up, dusted off my hands, and gave the dark gray cashmere sweater a cursory glance. I nodded. Yes, it looks good on him. That's very thoughtful of you, Jessica. My placid reaction seemed to surprise her. She paused, then smiled again. Sarah, you must be exhausted after all this. When Scott gets home tomorrow, you should take a good rest. If you need any help at home, just let me know. Okay, thank you, I said, my tone still neutral. Jessica seemed to lose interest. After a few more words with Scott, she left. After she was gone, Scott held up the sweater. Sarah, maybe we should return this. It's too expensive. Why return it? It was a kind gesture. I walked over, took the sweater from him, and unfolded it. The quality is nice. You should wear it tomorrow. It'll make you look good. Scott studied my face as if searching for any sign of annoyance or jealousy. He found none. I just calmly folded the sweater and put it back in the bag, then went back to packing. Sarah, he said again, his voice intentionally gentle. When I get home, I'll still need you to handle things with the company and at home. My body will need time to recover. I know. You just focus on getting well, I said without looking up. He hesitated, choosing his words. About Jessica. She can be a bit overeager, but she means well. She's just a straightforward person. If she says anything that upsets you, don't take it to heart. We've been married for so many years. Our bond isn't something anyone can break. My hand stopped moving for a second. Our bond? You want to talk about our bond now? The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I turned around, even managing a small smile. I understand. You just had major surgery, you can't get emotional. I get it. Don't worry. I won't hold anything against her. My understanding and generosity clearly pleased him and seemed to put him at ease. He nodded and went back to his phone. I watched his profile, the last flicker of warmth in my heart completely extinguished. Scott, you not only betrayed me, you're treating me like an idiot. Fine. That just makes it easier. I won't feel a shred of guilt for what I'm about to do. The next day, Scott was discharged. As planned, he wore the cashmere sweater from Jessica under the thick coat I'd brought for him. He did look much better. Carol and Megan were there bustling around. Dr. Evans did a final checkup, reminding us of all the post-discharge instructions, especially the importance of taking the immunosuppressants on time and regular follow-ups. Dr. Evans, thank you so much for everything, I said sincerely. Doctor, Evans looked at me, a complex emotion in his eyes. Of course. Mr. Anderson is recovering well, but the follow-up care is crucial, especially the anti-rejection meds. That's for life. There's no room for error. I understand. Don't worry, I said. Doctor. Evans glanced at Scott, who was surrounded by his mother and sister, then lowered his voice to me. Mrs. Anderson, take care of yourself too. Don't overdo it, and try to let some things go. I froze, then understood. He must have heard the gossip from the nurse's station. He was gently warning me, or perhaps pitying me. I gave him a smile, though only I knew how much bitterness it held. Thank you, doctor. I will. Stepping out of the hospital, the sunlight was blinding. I took a deep breath of the cold, fresh air, finally releasing some of the stale tension I'd been holding in my lungs. After Scott, Carol, and Megan got in the car, I stood by the door. Mom, you and Megan take Scott home. I have a few things to take care of. I'll be back later. What's so urgent? Carol asked, surprised. It's some paperwork for the property sale. The buyer is in a hurry. We scheduled it for this afternoon. I lied smoothly. Hearing it was about the sale, Carol nodded in understanding, a look of sympathy on her face. All right then. Finish up quickly and come home. Don't overtire yourself. I will, Mom. The car drove off. I stood on the curb until it disappeared into traffic. Then I turned around and walked back into the hospital. I wasn't going to the real estate office. I wasn't going home. I took the elevator straight up to the surgical department. I stood outside Dr. Evans's office and knocked. Come in, his steady voice called. I pushed the door open. He was at his computer writing up a patient file. He looked up, surprised to see me. Mrs. Anderson, did you forget something, or is Mr. Anderson not feeling well? I closed the door behind me and sat in the chair opposite his desk. I sat up straight, my hands folded in my lap, trying to appear calm. Dr. Evans, I'm not here about my husband. I looked him straight in the eye and said, word by word, I'm here to ask you for some information about post-transplant immunosuppressant drugs. Doctor. Laden enisokin. Laden enisuppressant. Evans pushed his glasses up. I believe I went over this in detail with you at discharge. Take them on time, regular checkups, watch for signs of rejection. It's vital. I know it's vital. I nodded, leaning forward slightly and lowering my voice. So, I want to ask, Dr. Evans, hypothetically, if a heart transplant patient during their recovery were to stop taking their medication or not take the prescribed dosage, what would happen? Doctor. Evans's brow furrowed immediately, his expression turning serious. Mrs. Anderson, what are you implying? You must ensure Mr. Anderson takes his medication as prescribed. Stopping or reducing the dosage is extremely dangerous. It can cause acute or chronic rejection leading to graft, failure, or even death. Death. The word struck me like a bell, but my face remained impassive. I even managed a small, eerie smile. Dr. Evans, please don't misunderstand. I softened my tone, trying to sound earnest and harmless. I'm not going to stop his medication. I just want to understand. If he were to refuse to take it, or if someone were to accidentally give him the wrong dose, what would the consequences be? Medically speaking, how long would that process take? What would the symptoms be? Dr. Evans stared at me, the confusion in his eyes slowly turning to scrutiny, and then to a flicker of alarm. The air in the office grew thick. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers on the desk. His voice was graver now. Mrs. Anderson, what is it you're really trying to say? He understood. He knew my question went far beyond the scope of a typical family member's inquiry. He was sensing the danger. I looked him in the eye, no longer beating around the bush. I laid my cards on the table. Dr. Evans, I want to make a deal with you. A deal? His frown deepened. I took a manila envelope from my bag and slid it across the desk. In here is evidence of my husband transferring our marital assets before and during his illness, along with his intent to divorce me and leave me with nothing after his recovery. Dr. Evans's expression shifted, but he didn't touch the envelope. I continued, I know that as a doctor, you have your professional ethics. I am not asking you to do anything unethical. On the contrary, I need your professional expertise and assistance to ensure that my husband, Scott Anderson, receives standardized and complete post-operative treatment and medication guidance. I stressed the words standardized and complete. He was a smart man. He got it instantly. I wasn't asking him to harm Scott. I was asking him to ensure that from this point forward, Scott must, and only could, follow the doctor's orders. Any attempt to tamper with his medication or exploit medical loopholes to harm my interests would be blocked by professional medical oversight. All you need to do is, when required, provide your professional medical opinion as his attending physician. For example, confirming that he must strictly adhere to his medication regimen or face life-threatening consequences, or, when necessary, reminding him of the importance of follow-up appointments and keeping meticulous medical records. My speech was even, my logic clear. In return, I paused, pulling a few pages from the envelope. It was a copy of the deed to the studio apartment and a notarized signed letter of intent for a large donation to a medical research fund under Dr. Evans's name. This apartment was the last asset I had left after selling everything to save him. Now it's yours, in a completely legal way that will bring you both prestige and tangible benefits. I watched as his pupils contracted. Or, I added, if you prefer cash, I can arrange for the equivalent amount. This money is enough to fund one of your research projects or a medical program you wish to support. And I guarantee this conversation, the true reason for this donation, and the existence of this evidence will remain strictly between us. A long silence filled the office. Dr. Evans's fingers tapped rhythmically on his desk, his gaze shifting between my face and the envelope. He was weighing the risks, the benefits, his conscience as a doctor against the temptation and the need for self-preservation as a man. I was gambling. I was betting on a stranger's choice when faced with a huge sum of money and a potential threat. I was betting he would be willing to provide me with a crucial layer of protection without crossing any major ethical lines. The seconds ticked by like centuries. Finally, he stopped tapping. He reached out, picked up the donation letter, and read it carefully. Then he looked up at me, the initial shock and suspicion gone from his eyes, replaced by a deep, complex understanding. "Mrs. Anderson," he began, his voice a little hoarse, "you are much more formidable than you appear." I said nothing, just met his gaze. "This donation." He lifted the paper slightly. "On behalf of our department's Pediatric Congenital Heart Disease Charity Fund, I accept. It will be used for the children who need it most. It's within regulations and will do real good." I inclined my head slightly. That is its best purpose. As for Mr. Anderson's follow-up treatment, Dr. Evans put the letter down and sat up straight, his professional demeanor returning as his attending physician. "It is my duty to ensure he receives the most standardized and comprehensive medical care. I will professionally warn against and correct any behavior that is detrimental to his recovery. That is a doctor's responsibility." "Of course." I nodded. "That is exactly what I was hoping for. Also, Dr. Evans added, his tone meaningful, post-transplant. A patient's emotional management is also very important. Extreme emotional fluctuations, excessive anger, anxiety, or elation can trigger arrhythmias or even more severe complications. As his family, it is your responsibility to create a peaceful and stable recovery environment for him." I met his gaze and understood his implicit message. "I understand," I said. "I will do my best to help him maintain emotional stability." Dr. Evans nodded, saying no more. I knew the deal was struck. I had gained a professional ally and a supervisor on the medical front. And Dr. Evans had received a donation that was significant enough to move him, along with a promise to be kept out of the messy details. Neither of us had crossed a fundamental line, but we had formed a tacit, temporary alliance. I stood up and gave him a slight bow. "Dr. Evans, thank you. I'll be counting on you to look after my husband's checkups and medication." "It's my duty," he said, standing as well. I took back the envelope with the copies of my evidence and left the office. As the door closed behind me, even the sterile smell of the hallway seemed less suffocating. I didn't leave the hospital right away. I went to the stairwell, leaned against the cold wall, and slowly sank to the floor. Only then did my frayed nerves begin to relax, followed by a wave of profound exhaustion and fear. I had just walked a tightrope, betting my last asset on a stranger's integrity. But I knew I had no other choice. Scott and Jessica were sharpening their knives. I couldn't just wait to be slaughtered. Dr. Evans was Scott's doctor, a medical authority. His opinion could be decisive at a critical moment. More importantly, I needed an insurance policy, one that would prevent them from getting desperate, tampering with the medication, and then pinning it on me. Now I had that insurance. I took a few deep breaths and slowly stood up. My legs were numb, but my steps felt steadier than when I had arrived. "Scott, Jessica, the game has just begun. You want to play? I'll play with you to the end. We'll see who's laughing on their way to the grave." I didn't go straight home. I went to a nearby cafe, ordered the strongest Americano, and sat down to collect my thoughts. The bitterness of the coffee on my tongue made me feel unnaturally alert. 7 years of marriage flashed before my eyes like a movie on fast forward. The innocent love on campus, the mutual support as we started our careers, the hardship of building our business, the joy of our son Leo's birth, and the gradual, unspoken distance that grew between us. I once thought our love had fused into our very bones, that we were inseparable. Now I knew that even something fused to your bones can become a burden, and that deep affection is no match for the thrill of a new temptation. When did he start to change? Was it when the business started to do well, and he began going out for client dinners, sometimes coming home with the scent of a different perfume? Was it when he started complaining that I only cared about our child and the house, that I'd let myself go and we had nothing to talk about anymore? Or was it earlier, at some college reunion after Jessica got divorced, when they reconnected? It didn't matter anymore. What Cute had changed and had systematically started to hollow out our family, preparing to cast me aside. He was even plotting against me while I was fighting for his life. I took out my phone and reviewed the evidence. I'd secretly photographed the bank transfer, the proxy agreement draft, the divorce settlement, and the recording I'd made during my conversation with Dr. Evans, which I had secretly activated in my pocket. I played back the key parts. Can cause acute or chronic rejection leading to graft failure or even death. Dr. Evans's serious professional voice was clear. Dr. Evans, I want to make a deal with you. My own voice sounded chillingly unfamiliar. The recording ran to the very end, including his acceptance of the donation and his final warning about emotional stability. Good. With this, plus the other evidence, I finally had something resembling a hand to play, but it wasn't enough. Where had the $300,000 loan gone? How far along were he and Jessica in their planning? Did they have other schemes in the works? I needed more concrete proof, and I couldn't just wait. I had to go on the offensive to find their weaknesses when they were most relaxed and complacent. After finishing my coffee, I paid the bill and left. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over the city, but the wind on my face was still sharp and cold. I hailed a cab back to the house, the one we had sold, the one we were only temporarily staying in before we had to move. I opened the door to a lively scene. My mother-in-law had cooked a feast. Scott was sitting at the head of the table. Though still pale, he looked well. Megan and her husband were there with their young son. My son Leo was happily running around the table. "Mommy, you're back!" Leo ran to me and hugged my legs. I bent down, picked him up, and kissed his cheek. "Were you a good boy today, Leo?" "Yes. Grandma made lots of yummy food," he said excitedly. "Sarah, you're back. Wash your hands and eat." "We were waiting for you," Carol called from the kitchen, carrying the last dish. "Okay." I put Leo down and went to wash my hands. As I passed Scott, he glanced at me. "Did the paperwork go smoothly?" he asked casually. "Yes, mostly. Just waiting for the final closing," I answered. My face a mask of calm, as if the studio apartment had really been sold. He nodded, didn't ask any more, and turned back to chat with my brother-in-law. The dinner atmosphere was superficially harmonious. Carol kept putting food on Scott's plate, telling him to eat up and get strong. Megan offered words of encouragement. Scott didn't say much, but he had a faint smile on his face. I ate quietly, taking care of Leo, playing the role of a dutiful wife and mother. Only I knew what dark currents were flowing beneath the placid surface. "Scott, to survive something like this, you're destined for great things," my brother-in-law said, raising his glass of soda. "Let's toast to Scott's recovery." Everyone raised their glasses. I raised mine too, looking at Scott. He happened to be looking at me. Our eyes met for a second, then slid away. In his eyes, I saw not the relief of a survivor or gratitude toward me, but a sense of unburdening and a glimmer of anticipation for some future event. What was he anticipating? A full recovery so he could be with Jessica? I suppressed the chill in my heart and drained my glass. After dinner, Megan and her family helped clear the table, stayed for a while, then left. Carol sat with Scott in the living room, reminding him to take his medicine and rest. I took Leo to take a bath and put him to bed. When I came out of Leo's room, Scott had gone to the master bedroom. Carol was staying in the guest room for a few days to help out. I walked into our bedroom. Scott was propped up in bed looking at his phone. He immediately locked the screen when I entered. "Is Leo asleep?" he asked. "Yes." I sat at my vanity and started removing my makeup. In the mirror, I could see he was hesitating. "Sarah," he finally said, "there's something I wanted to discuss with you." "What is it?" I continued my routine, watching him in the mirror. With my illness, a lot of things at the company have been neglected. Even though the VP has been managing, there are some important decisions and clients I need to handle personally, he began slowly. The doctor said I need to rest and not overexert myself, but some calls and video meetings are unavoidable. I might need a quiet, undisturbed space to work. So, I was thinking of setting up the study for myself. I'll rest and work in there for a while. At night, I might have to take calls or be on video conferences, and I don't want to disturb you and Leo. He sounded reasonable, sincere. So, it begins. Separate rooms. I sneered internally, but my face showed only concern. But you're not fully recovered. What if something happens at night, and you're alone in there? It's fine. Mom's in the guest room, it's close by. And I'm not a child, I'll be careful. It's just that the work is urgent, he explained. All right then. Just be careful and don't get too tired. I nodded, not objecting. I'll help you set up the study tomorrow. Thanks, he said, looking relieved. Of course, I replied. That night, I lay alone in our king-size bed. The space beside me empty. The familiar warmth and scent were gone. I knew that once this door was closed, it would be hard to open it again. This wasn't just about having a quiet place to work. It was the beginning of him drawing a line, paving the way for a formal separation and, eventually, divorce. Fine by me. It makes my work easier. The next day, I helped him set up the study, moving in bedding and some of his personal items. On the surface, everything was normal. I was still the devoted wife, looking after his meals, reminding him to take his medication, and scheduling his next checkup with Dr. Evans. He was polite but distant, spending most of his time in the study working. But I often heard him on the phone in a hushed, gentle tone that was definitely not for business. I also noticed he was becoming inconsistent with his anti-rejection medication. Sometimes when I reminded him, he'd say, "In a minute," or "I already took it." Once, I even found a small white pill, one of his daily immunosuppressants, discarded in his study's trash can under some crumpled papers. My heart seized. He was messing with the medication. Was he trying to stop taking it, or trying to stage an accident? I secretly took a picture of the pill and said nothing. That evening, I accidentally spilled a glass of water on his desk, soaking some papers. He was annoyed. I apologized profusely, and while helping him clean up, I happened to push his pill bottles further onto the desk, making them more conspicuous and less likely to be knocked over. Then, in front of him, I called Dr. Evans and put the phone on speaker. "Dr. Evans, sorry to bother you so late. I just wanted to double-check about Scott's immunosuppressants. Do they have to be taken at the exact same time every day? What if he's an hour or two late, or misses a dose occasionally?" "Doctor." Evans's voice on the other end was stern. "Mrs. Anderson, I've stressed this many times. It must be a consistent time and dose every single day without fail. A transplanted heart is not like other organs. The risk of rejection is lifelong. Irregular medication will destabilize the drug concentration in his blood and dramatically increase the risk of acute rejection. The consequences are extremely serious. You both must take this with the utmost gravity." Yes, Dr. Evans. We'll be very careful. We'll make sure he takes it on time," I said, glancing at Scott out of the corner of my eye. He sat in his chair, his face unreadable in the lamplight. After hanging up, I turned to him with a worried look. "Scott, you heard him. We really can't be careless with this. From now on, I'm setting 3 alarms for you every day. You have to remember to take it. If you're not feeling well or you forget, just call me. I'll bring you water." He forced a smile. "I know you nag. I'll remember." After that, I would bring him a glass of water on schedule every day and watch him take the pills in front of me before I left. He was clearly getting annoyed but couldn't say anything. And during these visits, I would discreetly observe his study, his computer, the papers on his desk. My opportunity came on the day of his first post-discharge checkup. The results were good. Dr. Evans said he was recovering well and to keep it up. Scott seemed to be in a good mood. On the way out of the hospital, he said he wanted to stop by the office. He told me to take his mother and Leo home first. I dropped them off, then said I had to pick up a package, and that they should go ahead. Once their car was out of sight, I turned around and went back into the hospital. Not to the cardiac surgery department, but to neurology. I got an appointment, saw a doctor, and described my symptoms. Doctor, I've been having terrible trouble sleeping. I'm up all night. During the day, I'm dizzy, my heart pounds, and my memory is shot. I keep forgetting things. I can't control my emotions sometimes. I just start crying for no reason. Is it a nervous breakdown? The doctor asked some questions and suggested a few tests, including a brain scan and a psychological evaluation. In between tests, I took the referral forms and found a quiet corner in the hospital corridor to make a call. It was to my best friend from college, Linda. She was now a lawyer specializing in family law and property disputes. Linda, it's Sarah. Sarah, how are you? I heard Scott was sick. I've been meaning to call but didn't want to bother you. Linda's capable voice was a comfort. My nose stung. I fought back tears and lowered my voice. Linda, I'm okay. But I need your help. I really need it. I can't talk over the phone. Can you come to City General? I'm in the neurology waiting area. Don't tell anyone. Linda heard the urgency in my voice. Okay. I'm on my way. Give me 30 minutes. Half an hour later, Linda rushed in. She was shocked when she saw how haggard I looked. Sarah? What happened to you? Your skin and bones. Is it Scott? I pulled her to a deserted corner and as quickly as I could told her everything. Selling the houses, Jessica's appearance, the evidence I'd found, my deal with Dr. Evans, my current situation, and my suspicions. As Linda listened, her face grew darker and darker until it was a mask of cold fury. That son of a bitch, she hissed, squeezing my hand. Sarah, I'm so sorry you went through this. Don't worry, I'm on this. Linda, I need you to do a few things for me, I said quickly. First, look at the evidence I have. Is it strong enough in court? What else do I need? Second, help me trace that $300,000 loan and get the details on this Oratech company and on Jessica. And third, and most important, I looked at her, my eyes pleading. Find me a reliable private investigator. Discreet, resourceful, professional, money is not an issue. I still have a little left. Linda nodded without hesitation. Okay. I'll review the evidence tonight. I have connections to trace the loan and the company. And I know a P.I. We've worked together before. He's good. I'll contact him for you. But Sarah, she looked at me with concern. It's dangerous for you to be living with him. What if he gets desperate? I know. I'll be careful. It's not time to show my hand yet. I need more concrete evidence to make sure I can take him down in one go, I said calmly. And now I have Dr. Evans on my side. Medically, he won't dare to do anything reckless. I will protect myself and Leo. Linda looked at me, her eyes full of sympathy and admiration. Sarah, you're even stronger than I thought. Remember, whatever happens, I'm here for you. You're not alone. Thank you, Linda. My eyes finally welled up. Having a friend in this darkest hour, it was a warmth that thawed a small part of my frozen heart. After Linda left, I got my test results. As expected, nothing major was wrong. The doctor diagnosed me with an anxiety and depressive state and prescribed some sleeping pills and mood stabilizers. I went back to that place I could no longer call home. Scott wasn't back yet. His mother was playing with Leo in the living room. I went to my bedroom, locked the door, and took out an old phone from the back of my closet. It was a burner phone I used to use. No SIM card, just for Wi-Fi. Now it had a new purpose. I used it to create a new anonymous social media account. Then, using the contact info Linda had sent, I added the private investigator on an encrypted messaging app. His handle was simply K. He accepted my request and sent a message. Me. Linda the lawyer referred me. I have a case. K. Understood. Voice or text? Me. Text. Me. I need 2 people investigated. My husband, Scott Anderson, and a woman named Jessica Fang. I need as much detail as possible. Their movements, communications, legally obtainable financial records, unusual asset changes, and any evidence of financial transactions or collusion between them. The primary focus is a company called Oratech and the trail of a $300,000 bank loan. Time frame from the beginning of last year to the present. Kay was silent for a moment, then replied, K. Targets have some social standing. Investigation will be multifaceted. Surveillance, communications, financial, corporate, difficulty and risk level. Medium, high, preliminary estimate, $8,000, $12,000, depending on difficulty and value of intel. 30% upfront, 30% midway. Final payment on delivery of all evidence. All methods will be within legal boundaries. Final deliverable will be a structured evidence chain report and some audio, visual materials. A digital retainer agreement is required. The price was steep, almost half of what I had left. I didn't hesitate. Me. Acceptable. How do I sign and pay? K. Will send E, signature link, review and sign. Payment via designated account. Installments accepted. Investigation begins within 24 hours of receiving retainer. Me. One more thing. I need this expedited. I need key evidence as soon as possible. K. Understood. Rush fee is an additional 20%. Me. Fine. I didn't haggle. Right now, time and information were worth more than money. After signing the agreement, I transferred the initial payment. Then I hid the old phone and deleted all my chat history. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion, anxiety, and a bizarre thrill. Scott, Jessica, you've been weaving your web in the shadows. Now, I'm raising my rifle in the shadows too. Let's see who becomes the prey. Kay's efficiency was beyond my expectations. On the 3rd day of the investigation, he sent the first report, not through the app, but via an encrypted link to a temporary cloud drive. What I read made my blood run cold, but also felt horribly inevitable. First, Kay confirmed the destination of the $300,000 loan. The money never touched Scott's company account. 3 days after it was dispersed, it was funneled through a shell corporation called Ribo Consulting and landed in Oratech's startup account, forming part of its initial capital. The legal representative of Oratech was a stranger, but Kay's preliminary investigation of the money trail showed that the true controlling party was a holding platform managed by Jessica Fang's cousin. In other words, Scott had used our marital property as collateral, laundered the money, and handed it over to a company controlled by Jessica. Second, Kay provided evidence of Scott and Jessica's recent frequent contact. He listed their usual meeting spots, a discreet hot spring resort in the countryside, an apartment owned by Jessica, and a blurry long-distance photo of them entering the resort together. In the photo, Scott was wearing a hat and mask, but I recognized his build and his shoes. In terms of communication, Kay pointed out that besides regular messaging, they frequently used an encrypted overseas app. The content was inaccessible, but the frequency of use spoke for itself. Finally, there was information about Jessica. Kay had dug up details of her previous marriage. Her ex-husband was wealthy, and she had received a decent settlement in the divorce. But she had been living beyond her means, and a few bad investments had left her financially strained. The timing of her reconnection with Scott coincided perfectly with her financial troubles. And Auratech's business was just a few undeveloped tech concepts, seemingly designed for fundraising and money laundering. I read the report, closed the link, and cleared my browser history. The evidence was surfacing piece by piece. The puzzle was coming together. This wasn't just an affair, it was a premeditated theft of our assets, and I had almost been the one stripped bare and thrown away. In the following days, I acted even more normally. I took meticulous care of Scott, supervised his medication, and arranged his follow-up appointments. I had no complaints about him holing up in his study all day. His mother stayed for a few days, saw that he was recovering well and that I was taking good care of him, and went home. The house was once again just me, Scott, and Leo. With his mother gone, Scott became more brazen. Sometimes when he was on the phone with Jessica, he barely bothered to lower his voice. I could hear snippets through the study door. Relax. It's almost all arranged. What could she suspect? Her life revolves around the kid and the kitchen. Just wait until this blows over. We get the paperwork signed. I know it's been hard on you. Just a little longer. Every word was a poison-tipped needle in my ear. But my face remained a placid mask. Once, when he came out for water after a call, I even asked innocently, "How are things with your clients? You seem to be on the phone a lot lately." He was startled, then mumbled, "Oh, it's fine. Just a lot of backlogged work to catch up on. Don't work too hard. Your health is the priority," I said, gently turning to the kitchen to prepare lunch. The moment my back was to him, the smile vanished from my face, replaced by a cold, hard hatred. A few days later, Scott said he had to meet an important client in person and probably wouldn't be home for dinner. I helped him get ready, reminded him to take his medication, and saw him off. The moment he was gone, I ran to the bedroom, locked the door, and pulled out the burner phone. Kay had updated the cloud drive half an hour ago. Target A. Scott. Left home at 10 a.m., headed to Blue Note Cafe. Target B. Jessica. Arrived at 9:50 a.m. They are in a private booth. Have placed compliant listening device nearby, awaiting instruction for real-time summary. My heart hammered against my ribs. I quickly replied, "Proceed. Be careful." A few minutes later, Kay sent through transcribed snippets of their conversation. Despite some background noise, the key information was terrifyingly clear. Jessica, whining, complaining. "Scott, how much longer are you going to make me wait? Seeing you and your happy little family every day is like a knife in my heart. Why is that frumpy housewife still calling herself Mrs. Anderson? And that brat, Scott." Placating. "Calm down. Just a little longer. She's watching me like a hawk right now, especially with the medication. She makes sure I take it every day. And she's gotten close to Dr. Evans. I can't get a read on him. We need a foolproof opportunity." Jessica. "Opportunity? By the time you're fully recovered and the assets are split, do you think she'll just agree to a divorce? I think you're just dragging your feet. That studio apartment she was supposed to sell, where's the money? Did she hide it?" Scott. "I'll push her on the apartment. The money should be fine. She wouldn't dare. The most important thing now is my investment. I need to get it out of the company and into Auratech's account cleanly. The company is being audited right now. It's tricky." Jessica. "I don't care. I'm telling you, Scott. I gave you the best years of my life and I've waited for you. I'm not here to be strung along. By next month, you need to slap that divorce agreement in her face. And the assets have to be divided as we planned. Or else, don't blame me for telling everyone how you convinced me to help you move the assets and how you plan to make her accidentally stop giving you your meds. We can all go down together." There was a scuffling sound. Then Scott's voice, low and furious. "Are you crazy? You can't say things like that. Okay, I get it. Next month I'll handle it. Just stay calm and don't mess this up. I'll take care of the money. You just make sure the books at Oratech are clean." The transcript ended there. I clutched the phone, my body icy, my blood seemingly frozen. Planned to make her accidentally stop giving you your meds. They had actually planned it. A way to get rid of me. That's why he had been so careless with his pills, why I'd found one in the trash. If I hadn't been vigilant, if I hadn't made that deal with Dr. Evans, if I hadn't watched him like a hawk. A chill shot up my spine. It wasn't heartbreak. It was the terror and fury of realizing the true venom of this pair. They didn't just want my money and my family. They had, at one point, wanted my life, or at least to saddle me with the guilt and blame of his death for the rest of my days. Fine. Just fine. Scott. Jessica. You've just severed the last pathetic thread of sentiment I had for our past. With trembling hands, I replied to Kay. Me. Save the original recording, it's crucial. Keep monitoring them. Focus on the company audit, the asset transfers, and any other specific plans they have. Kay? Understood. I put the phone away and paced my room, trying to calm the storm inside me. Stay calm, Sarah. The more vicious they are, the colder you must be. The evidence was getting stronger, but it wasn't a smoking gun yet. Their conversation about accidents was damning, but a fuzzy recording might not be enough in court. I needed something more solid, and I had to start planning for my own future and Leo's. The studio apartment was my lifeline. I couldn't touch it, but I couldn't just sit on it either. I opened my laptop and started browsing job sites. I sent out a few tentative emails to old colleagues asking about freelance or remote work opportunities. Scott came home late that night, smelling of alcohol. "You've been drinking," I said, frowning as I helped steady him. Dr. Evans said absolutely no alcohol. He pushed me away, annoyed. Just a little. It was a business dinner. I know my limits. I watched him stumble into the study and close the door. My eyes were like ice. You know your limits. Your limit is plotting with your mistress on how to leave me destitute, or maybe even dead. The next day was Saturday. Scott surprisingly emerged from his study and said he wanted to take Leo to a new indoor playground. Leo was ecstatic. I looked at Scott and said gently, "That's a great idea. You two haven't had a father-son day in a while. I actually have a meeting with an old colleague today, so I can't join you." Scott glanced at me, a flicker of relief in his eyes. "Okay. You go do your thing. I've got Leo." I knew he thought I was off to finalize the apartment sale or some other mundane task. It played right into his hands, creating the image of a happy, stable family for any onlookers or for Jessica, who was probably observing from a distance to bolster his case for custody later. He was wrong. I did have a meeting, but not with a colleague. Linda had arranged for me to meet a senior divorce attorney, a mentor of hers named Mr. Davies, renowned for handling complex cases of hidden marital assets. We met in a private room at a quiet tea house. Mr. Davies was in his 50s, calm and composed, with gold-rimmed glasses. I laid out my case as objectively as I could, showing him copies of the evidence, including Kay's latest findings and the transcript of the damning conversation. He listened, his brow furrowed, and reviewed the documents. Finally, he spoke. "Mrs. Anderson, your situation is more complex and malicious than I initially thought. This goes beyond a simple affair and asset transfer. There's an element of potential endangerment here, though the direct evidence is still thin. So, what should I do? When is the right time to file?" I asked. "You could file now, mister," Davies analyzed. "With the evidence of you selling your homes to save him, we can argue he acted in bad faith, violating his spousal duty. That would give you a significant advantage in the asset division. For custody, given his health and his affair, your chances are very high." However, he paused. "If you can obtain more concrete evidence, a complete chain of the $300,000 loan, proof it illegally funded a third-party company, and a clearer recording of their dangerous conversations, then this isn't just about a favorable settlement. It could involve criminal charges like fraud or worse. At the negotiating table, you would have absolute power. You could potentially leave him with nothing and see him face legal consequences. I understand. I nodded. The investigator is still working. I need time. Be careful with time, mister, Davies warned. Don't wait too long, or he might get suspicious and destroy evidence. Don't act too soon, or you'll tip your hand without enough proof. And above all, you must be careful about your personal safety. Your husband's medical condition is a volatile element. Any accident could be manipulated. Your insistence on him taking his medication and documenting it is absolutely the right and critical move. It not only protects him, it protects you. I understand. Thank you, Mr. Davies. I'll start preparing the basic lawsuit framework. Regarding my fee, Linda told me about your situation. We can work on a contingency basis, a small retainer now, and we'll take a percentage of the final settlement. How does that sound? That would be a great help. Thank you, I said, relieved. Leaving the tea house, my path forward felt clearer. With professional legal backing, I was no longer fighting alone. The sun was bright. I still had time, so I went to the mall and bought Leo some new clothes, then did some grocery shopping. When I got home, Scott and Leo were back. Leo was sweaty and excited, chattering about the playground. Scott was on the couch, smiling at his phone. Did you have fun? I asked Scott casually as I wiped Leo's face. Yeah, it was okay, he said, not looking up. Daddy bought me ice cream, Leo announced. Oh, really? Did you thank Daddy? Thank you, Daddy. Scott finally looked up at Leo and smiled. You're welcome, buddy. In that moment, the love on his face was genuine. It was a father's love. My heart twisted. If he were just a cheating husband, perhaps I would only feel hate, but he was also Leo's father. Our war would inevitably hurt our son. All I could do was my best to minimize the damage and give him a future that was, if not whole, at least safe and honest. That night, after putting Leo to bed, I went to our room. Scott was already in bed, propped up against the headboard. He saw me and said, Sarah, my college reunion is next weekend. It's a 2-day thing at Lakeview Resort. A few of my close friends want to see how I'm doing. You should come with me. A college reunion? At Lakeview Resort? Jessica would be there, wouldn't she? Was he trying to flaunt their connection in front of me? Or create a facade of a happy family for his friends before he dropped the bomb? I could picture the scene, but this could also be an opportunity. A chance to observe them up close in public, and maybe gather more information. I feigned hesitation. A reunion? They're all your friends. I might feel out of place. And what about Leo? Bring Leo with us. We can treat it like a weekend getaway. A bunch of other people are bringing their families, Scott said, his tone leaving little room for argument. I looked into his eyes, but I couldn't read their depths. After a moment, I nodded and smiled. Okay then. I'll go. It'll be nice to meet your old friends. Let's see what kind of a show you're planning to put on, and let's see what I can get out of it. Lakeview Resort was nestled in the hills outside the city. A serene place perfect for getaways. Scott drove his SUV, which he hadn't touched since he got sick. I sat in the back with Leo. Scott seemed to be in a good mood, occasionally chatting with Leo, even putting on some music. I, however, was on edge. I stared out the window, mentally checking the contents of my bag. IDs, Leo's things, my medication, and Scott's stored separately, a power bank, and the burner phone on silent, tucked into a hidden pocket. When we arrived, the reunion organizer, Scott's old class president, a friendly guy named Tom, was already waiting in the parking lot. Scott, you made it. You look great, man, Tom said, clapping Scott on the shoulder. He turned to me, and Sarah, looking younger than ever. Is this Leo? He's gotten so big. I exchanged pleasantries with Tom. He led us to check in. I noted the room, a family suite with one king bed and one twin appropriate. We dropped our bags and went to the restaurant. The private dining room was already buzzing with a dozen or so people. When we walked in, everyone stood up to greet us. The conversation immediately turning to Scott's near-death experience. Dude, you really dodged a bullet. A heart transplant. How are you feeling? Sarah, you're a hero. Selling your houses to save him. We all heard about it. We're in awe. Yeah, Scott, you better treat her right. Scott, at the center of attention, smiled and deflected. Thanks, guys. I'm doing well. And yes, of course I will. I stood by his side, my arm linked through his, a polite, slightly shy smile on my face, accepting their praise and envious looks. Only I knew that beneath this intimate facade, our hearts were 1,000 miles apart. My eyes scanned the room, and then I saw her. Jessica. She was sitting by the window in a dusty rose dress, her makeup perfect, her hair in soft waves. She was chatting quietly with another woman, pretending not to have seen us, but the tense line of her jaw and the occasional flicker of her eyes in our direction betrayed her. Scott saw her too. His gaze lingered on her for half a second before he casually looked away and continued talking to a friend. But that brief moment of intensity did not escape me. Jessica's here too, one of the women exclaimed. You two were the it couple of our department back in the day. What a shame. Hey, that's ancient history. Don't bring that up. Another friend cut in. Scott and Sarah are happily married now with a great kid. Only then did Jessica seem to notice us. She stood up gracefully and walked over, her smile radiant. Scott, Sarah, you're here. Scott, you look so good. I'm so happy to see you recovering. Her eyes were fixed on his face, full of perfectly calibrated concern and joy. Thanks. I'm feeling okay. Scott nodded, his tone normal. Sarah, it must have been so tough on you, she said, turning to me, her expression flawlessly sincere. It was my duty. I smiled, meeting her gaze. Our eyes locked, and for a second, I could feel the unspoken animosity crackling in the air. But on the surface, all was well. The dinner started, and the mood was festive. People reminisced about their youth and talked about their current lives. Scott stuck to soda but drank a lot of it. I spent most of my time feeding Leo, occasionally chiming in on a conversation, playing the part of the quiet, supportive wife. Jessica was in her element. She was a natural center of attention, witty and charming. She kept bringing up old college stories, some involving Scott. She was clever about it, never going too far, just enough to evoke nostalgia and laughter. Scott would smile, or add a minor detail. I just listened, smiling, as if these stories of a past that didn't include me truly were just stories. Only a woman named Amy, who I'd been friendly with in college, kept shooting me worried, sympathetic glances. Later, someone suggested a game of truth or dare. The bottle spun and landed on Jessica. Truth, she said, poised. A rowdy friend asked Jessica, be honest. Are you seeing someone right now? Is there anyone you're interested in? All eyes turned to her. Jessica blushed prettily, her eyes flickering almost imperceptibly toward Scott. She looked down, a picture of shy resignation. What does it matter if there is or isn't? Some chances, once you miss them, they're gone forever. Some people are just meant to be kept in your heart. Her words were ambiguous and tantalizing. Friends started hooting. Ooh, she has someone. Who is it? Is it someone in this room? Stop it, you guys, Jessica said. But her coy expression was more of a confirmation than a denial. Many eyes darted between Scott and Jessica. Scott was looking down into his glass, his expression unreadable. I felt a wave of nausea, but I couldn't lose my composure. I let out a small laugh, my voice light and teasing. Jessica, you sound like you're in a soap opera. This isn't the Dark Ages. If you like someone, you should go for it. Keeping it in your heart is just torturing yourself. Unless the person is already married. That wouldn't be right. We're all decent people here. Wrecking a family is a line we don't cross, right? My voice wasn't loud, but in the momentary lull, it was crystal clear. Every head in the room swiveled toward me. The blush on Jessica's face froze, replaced by a flash of panic and anger. Scott's head snapped up, his eyes wide with shock and a hint of warning. I met their gazes, my smile still gentle and harmless, as if I had just stated the most obvious common-sense truth. The atmosphere turned awkward. Amy quickly jumped in. Exactly. Sarah's right. We're all adults here. Let's keep the jokes appropriate. Come on, spin the bottle. The game continued, but the flirtatious undercurrent had been decisively punctured. Jessica was quiet for the rest of the evening. Scott was on edge, and I acted as if nothing had happened, chatting with the other mothers about schools. After dinner, people broke off into groups. Scott said he was tired and wanted to go back to the room. I said I'd take Leo to the resort's playground for a bit. As I watched Scott walk toward the hotel building alone, my eyes grew cold. He was probably going to find Jessica to explain or to soothe her. I didn't follow. That wasn't my move. I played with Leo for over an hour before taking him back to the room. As expected, Scott wasn't there. I put Leo down for a nap, then took the burner phone out to the balcony. It overlooked a garden and a small lake. It was quiet. I opened the phone. Kay had sent a message half an hour ago. Kay, targets A and B entered room 211 inches building, 3 over 40 minutes ago. Building 3 is primarily suites. Awaiting further instruction. Room 211 wasn't Jessica's registered room. She was in our building. So they had a pre-arranged rendezvous point. Me. Do not attempt entry. Too risky. Monitor the room's entrance and surrounding public areas. Note if they exchange any items or have unusual contact. K. Understood. Attempting to access resort's internal security footage for that corridor, but it will take time. Me. Safety first. I leaned against the railing staring at the shimmering lake, my heart a block of ice. In broad daylight at a college reunion, they were this desperate. So reckless. Good. The more reckless they are, the more mistakes they'll make. In the afternoon, after Leo woke up, Scott returned to the room. He said he'd had a good nap and felt much better. I looked at his slightly flushed yet satisfied face and sneered internally. To his face, I asked with concern, "Did you sleep well? You still look a little pale. Maybe you should skip the barbecue tonight and rest." "No. It's fine. Everyone's going. It would be rude if I didn't," he said. The evening barbecue by the lake was more casual. Jessica was back to her bubbly self, flitting between groups. Scott sat with some of the men, chatting over sodas. I sat with Leo a short distance away. As night fell, the lakeside lights came on. Leo, having eaten, was playing on the grass with a couple of other kids. I grabbed a jacket to put on him. As I walked over, I heard familiar, hushed, angry voices from behind a thicket of bushes. It was Scott and Jessica. I froze, then slipped behind a large tree. What was that at lunch? Did you have to embarrass me in front of everyone? It was Jessica, furious. How was I supposed to know she'd say that? You weren't exactly subtle yourself. Scott shot back, annoyed. What did I say? I just said I had someone in my heart. What right did she have to be so sarcastic? I think she did it on purpose. Scott, I can't take it anymore. I can't stand looking at her sanctimonious face for one more minute. And that brat quiet, keep your voice down, Scott hissed. Just be patient. It's almost over. I'm pushing the lawyer. Once that proxy agreement is officially signed and the funds are transferred, I'm telling her. Do you have any idea what I'm dealing with? Jessica spat. I've maxed out my credit cards covering the gaps at Oratech. Where's the money you promised me? When is that $300,000 going to be fully clean? What do you want me to do? The company audit isn't finished. Moving a large sum right now would raise red flags. Next Monday, I'll figure out a way to get you $50,000 for now. 50K? What good is that? I don't care. By next Wednesday, I want to see $100,000. Or don't blame me for telling everyone everything, including how you talked to Dr. Evans about finding a way for there to be some negligence. Jessica, are you insane? You can't say that here. Scott's voice was a mix of anger and panic. Oh, I can. Don't push me, Scott. If I go down, we all go down. You're just a paper tiger now. Without those pills, you're nothing. Their argument was escalating. I held my breath quietly, took out the burner phone, and started recording, pointing the microphone in their direction. The environment was noisy, but I hoped to catch something. Just then, Leo ran toward me. Mommy, my toy car fell under the chair. The voices in the bushes stopped abruptly. I quickly hid my phone and rushed out to hug him. What's wrong, sweetie? Mommy will get it for you. As I looked up, Scott and Jessica emerged from the bushes one after the other. Both looked furious. They froze when they saw me. Leo dropped his toy, I said calmly, as if I hadn't noticed them together. Oh, I'm going to check on the grill, Scott said and hurried away. Jessica shot me a venomous glare and stalked off in the other direction. I picked up Leo's toy and carried him back to our seat, my heart still pounding. That conversation was a gold mine. The lawyer, the proxy agreement, the transfer of funds. The end game was near. Jessica was desperate for money, even resorting to blackmail. And most importantly, she had mentioned negligence and explicitly linked it to Dr. Evans. This was a major breakthrough. The recording might be poor quality, but it gave me a direction. The reunion ended in a haze of forced cheerfulness. Back in our room, Leo fell asleep quickly. Scott lay in bed with his back to me, pretending to be asleep. I knew he was awake. I was too. I waited. Late that night, when his breathing was deep and even, I crept out of bed with the burner phone and went into the bathroom, locking the door. I put on headphones and played the recording. It was noisy, but I could make out the key phrases. Lawyers pushing. Proxy agreement. Transfer funds. Tell her. Credit cards maxed. Money. Next Monday, 50K. Wednesday, 100K. Or I'll tell everyone. Dr. Evans' negligence. The keywords were there. Combined with the context, the meaning was clear. Especially that last part about Dr. Evans. It corroborated Kay's earlier intel. I saved the audio file, my hands shaking with adrenaline, and sent a copy to Kay to see if he could clean it up. Then I sent encrypted messages to Mr. Davies and Linda, alerting them to the breakthrough. Only then did I feel a wave of exhaustion. But my mind was buzzing. The evidence was falling into place. Scott, Jessica, your time is running out. I just didn't expect their counterattack to be so swift and so brutal. The drive back from the resort was tense. Scott drove in silence. I stared out the window, replaying the events, plotting my next move. The trip had been a success, but it may have spooked them. Jessica's final venomous look told me they felt threatened. What would they do next? The next few days were quiet on the surface. Scott spent more time in his study, but on the computer, not the phone. A deep frown etched on his face. I scheduled his next comprehensive checkup as per Dr. Evans's plan. When I told Scott, he was annoyed. Another checkup? I feel fine. Dr. Evans said the first 3 months are critical for monitoring. It's for your own good, I said patiently. He waved his hand in dismissal but didn't argue. The night before the checkup, I reminded him to get to bed early for the fasting blood test. He grunted in acknowledgement. Late that night, I was woken by a faint noise. Scott wasn't in bed. I got up and crept to the study. The door was cracked open. No, we can't wait any longer, Scott was whispering into the phone. She's been watching me so closely with these checkups. I have a bad feeling. Like she knows something. I'll try to sound out Dr. Evans again. If that doesn't work, we'll have to go with Plan B. Just a small adjustment to the dosage. Make it look like her mistake. Are you crazy? It was Jessica's voice. Tinny over the phone. Messing with the dosage? What if something goes wrong? If something goes wrong, it's her fault for not taking proper care of me. Scott's voice was vicious. As long as we're clean, they can't trace it back to us. I can't let her hold this over my head forever. I still haven't gotten the money from the apartment, and this audit is a nightmare. We have to get rid of her. Let me think. Don't do anything rash. I'll meet you tomorrow. The usual place? We'll talk then. Fine. Tomorrow. The call ended. I held my breath and tiptoed back to bed, my heart racing, my hands and feet like ice. They were going to do it. They were going to frame me for negligence, or worse, endanger his life and pin it all on me. Vicious. Utterly vicious. And they were going to sound out Dr. Evans. Had my cover been blown? The next morning, I made breakfast as usual and reminded Scott to take his pills. He took them in front of me, but I saw him quickly palm something and shove it in his pocket. On the way to the hospital, I asked casually, "Scott, what's that in your hand? You're being so secretive." He flinched, then opened his hand. A small packet of tissues. Nothing. My nose is a little stuffy. The alarm bells in my head were screaming. At the hospital, after the blood draw and while waiting for his heart scan, Scott said he needed to use the restroom. I watched him walk away. I didn't follow. Instead, I immediately sent a pre-written text to Dr. Evans. "Dr. Evans, at today's checkup, he may be suspicious of the medication or planning something. Please, after you review all results personally and explicitly, stress the importance of following the prescription and the extreme danger of any unauthorized changes. Please." I sent it and deleted the message. A few minutes later, Scott returned looking normal. The results came back. Everything was stable. "Looking good," Dr. Evans said, reviewing the reports. "Blood levels are in the ideal range. Keep it up. And remember, the medication on time, every time. No adjustments on your own." "Got it, Doc." "I'm taking this very seriously," Scott said with a smile. Dr. Evans then looked at me. "And good job, Mrs. Anderson. Your supervision is paying off. The next checkup is in a month. In the meantime, if he feels any discomfort, palpitations, shortness of breath, swelling, or if you notice any irregularity with his medication, come in immediately." "We will, doctor." "Thank you," I said. Leaving the clinic, Scott said he wanted to grab a bottle of water from the downstairs gift shop. I watched him head for the elevator, then quickly doubled back to Dr. Evans's office. I slipped in. "Dr. Evans," I whispered urgently, "they might suspect you. Or they're trying to test you. And they have a plan to tamper with his medication and frame me. Please be careful. Any communication about his condition, please have it recorded or have a third party present." Dr. Evans's face was grim. "I understand. I'll be careful. You need to be even more careful, especially with storing and administering the medication. If you can record it or have some other proof, I will. Thank you." When I got back to the car, Scott was waiting. On the way home, he was much quieter. That night, he said he was meeting a client. Jessica, I thought. The usual place. Discussing Plan B. The next day, Kay sent a new message. Target B, Jessica, visited a pharmacy this afternoon. Purchased potassium chloride, prescription for low potassium, and furosemide, a diuretic. Paid cash, no insurance. Have obtained partial security footage and a copy of the receipt. Note: these drugs, if taken improperly with immunosuppressants like tacrolimus, can cause severe electrolyte imbalance, cardiac stress, and potentially fatal arrhythmias. The pharmacy. Potassium chloride. A diuretic. My scalp prickled. They were getting the props for their little play. They'd use these common drugs, which Scott could claim he needed for swelling, to secretly interfere with his anti-rejection meds or cause a cardiac event, and then they'd blame me for giving him the wrong thing. Jessica's cash purchase was meant to keep her out of it. A perfect, evil plan. I immediately forwarded Kay's report to Mr. Davies and Linda. Mr. Davies' reply was swift. This is a red flag for premeditated crime. I advise. 1. Immediately and secretly replace all of Scott's current medication at home and store the original bottles as evidence. 2. Install hidden cameras in areas where medication might be handled. 3. Whenever possible, have a witness or video record you giving him any food or medicine. 4. Stay in close contact with Dr. Evans. If Scott shows any unusual symptoms, get him to the hospital immediately and secure medical evidence. 5. We need to accelerate the lawsuit. We must act before they do. Linda was terrified for me. Sarah, this is insane. You have to do what he says. I'll get you the cameras. And maybe you and Leo should move out. It's too dangerous. Not yet, I replied. Moving out now would put them on high alert and could hurt my custody case. I'll follow the lawyer's plan. Linda, please find me the most discreet cameras you can. The next 2 days, I moved quickly and quietly. I replaced all of Scott's medications with identical new ones. Carefully checking the dosage, I sealed and hid the old ones. The tiny, button-sized cameras Linda sourced were installed by a repairman, a trusted contact of hers, in the smoke detector above the kitchen counter, and in the frame of a decorative painting by the bedside table. They gave me a clear view of the key areas. I watched everything he ate and drank like a hawk. Scott seemed oblivious. He was still coming home late, a tense, frantic energy about him. The phone calls with Jessica seemed more frequent and more fraught with arguments. I could feel their alliance fracturing under the pressure. This was my chance. 3 days later, in the afternoon, Scott collapsed in his study. I was in the living room with Leo. I heard a thud and ran in. He was on the floor, pale, sweating, clutching his chest, his breathing ragged. Scott, what's wrong? I ran to him. Leo, go to Mommy's room. Get my phone and call 911. Quick. Leo, terrified but obedient, ran out of the room crying. I helped Scott lie flat and loosened his collar. He was grimacing in pain, his lips turning blue. My pills, he gasped, pointing to his desk drawer. I pulled it open. Inside were his usual pill bottles and a small, unlabeled pill box containing a few white tablets. They looked a bit like his usual diuretic, but not exactly. My eyes narrowed. I ignored the pill box and grabbed his standard immunosuppressant and the emergency nitroglycerin the doctor had prescribed. I shook out the correct dosage, got him some water, and helped him take them. My eyes darted around the room. His computer was on a banking website on the screen, but it was locked. On the desk, next to some files, was a half-empty glass of water. I memorized its position. The paramedics arrived quickly. I briefly explained his medical history and what I'd just given him. Mommy, Leo sobbed, clinging to me. I picked him up, grabbed Scott's medical file, and carefully wrapped the suspicious pill box in a tissue before following them to the ambulance. In the ambulance, I called his mother and sister and texted Dr. Evans. Dr. Evans! Scott collapsed. Suspected chest pain, shortness of breath. Gave him his regular meds and nitro. On our way to City General ER, found unknown white pills in his study, bringing them with me. Dr. Evans replied almost immediately. Bring him straight to the ER. I'm on my way down. As the siren wailed, I held my trembling son and looked at Scott on the gurney. Was this it? Was this their plan B? Did he take the pills himself? The glass of water? If this was their trap, I was walking right into it. But I also had the pill box. Was this the key to turning the tables? At the hospital, the ER team took over. Dr. Evans arrived and conferred with them. BP is low, heart rate is high, O2 sats are dropping. Get me a full blood panel, enzymes, electrolytes, drug levels, and an EKG stat, he ordered. Carol and Megan arrived, frantic. Sarah, what happened? He was fine this morning, Carol cried. I gave them a brief, edited version of events. While we waited, I excused myself, found an empty corner, and examined the pill box. 4 round, white pills. No markings. I carefully took one out, wrapped it in a clean tissue, and put it in a separate small bag. I found Dr. Evans and pulled him aside, handing him the pill box and the single pill. Doctor, I found this in his desk drawer. It looks like his diuretic, but it's not. I also noted a glass of water, but I couldn't bring it. Doctor, Evans took it, examined it, and his face became a grim mask. This is not his standard medication. We'll need to run a lab test. But for this to show up now, Sarah, you did the right thing. Hold on to this. And tell me, did you personally watch him take his morning dose today? Yes, the morning dose was normal. I watched him, but I don't know about lunch. I was with Leo, I said. Doctor? Evans nodded grimly. Let's wait for the blood work, especially the electrolytes and drug levels. If his potassium is abnormally high or his immunosuppressant levels are low, then we'll know. My heart sank. If that was the case, they weren't just trying to frame me. They were willing to risk Scott's life to do it. The preliminary blood results came back. The ER doctor's face was stern. His serum potassium is 6.8, dangerously high. EKG shows peaked T waves consistent with hyperkalemia. This is critical. We need to start treatment to lower his potassium immediately. Hyperkalemia. Doctor. Evans looked at me, his eyes confirming everything. He turned to Scott, who was now conscious but weak. Scott, did you take anything else today besides your prescribed medication? Anything at all? Supplements, herbal remedies, anything? Scott's eyes flickered. No, nothing else. Just my pills. Are you sure? Dr. Evans pressed. Your potassium level is so high it could cause your heart to stop. You have to tell me the truth. Hearing heart stop, Scott's face went white. He stammered. I just felt a little swollen at lunch, so I took an extra diuretic. Where did you get it? Dr. Evans asked. It was in my drawer, Scott mumbled, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Was there anything else in that drawer? Like this? Dr. Evans held up the pill box with the 3 remaining pills. Scott saw it, and his pupils contracted. The color drained from his face. His lips trembled, but no words came out. This is not mine, he finally choked out, but his panicked expression betrayed him. I found it in your study drawer, I said, my voice calm but carrying through the tense room. Right after you collapsed. It was right there with your other medications. Scott's head whipped toward me, his eyes filled with shock, terror, and disbelief. He clearly hadn't expected this. Scott, what is that? Where did you get it? His mother sobbed. I don't know, I didn't put it there. Scott tried to sit up, his voice rising. Sarah, it was you. You're trying to kill me. You put those pills in my drawer. The accusation hung in the air. Everyone stared at me. My mother-in-law's eyes were filled with confusion and doubt, but facing Scott's vicious lie, I felt a strange sense of calm. The final act had begun. I looked at his face, twisted with fear and malice, and I almost laughed. Scott, even now you're still acting, still trying to pin it all on me, but this time it won't work. I met his hateful gaze and slowly, deliberately took out my burner phone. You say I put them there. My voice was clear, laced with cold irony. Scott, Are you sure you want to continue this lie here, in front of your mother, your sister, and Dr. Evans? He faltered but rallied. What lie? It was in the drawer. If it wasn't you, who was it, Sarah? I never knew you could be so cruel. Just because my illness cost you your money, you resent me. You want me dead. Scott, shut up. Megan finally snapped. Sarah sold everything to save you. How could she hurt you? Then, how do you explain those pills? Scott shrieked. Did I try to poison myself? Why not? I cut him off, stepping forward. Why couldn't it be you? Or maybe it was your devoted, loving ex-girlfriend, Jessica. This has nothing to do with Jessica. He screamed, his agitation setting off the heart monitor's alarms. Nurses rushed in to administer a sedative. As he calmed, his eyes, still filled with hatred, remained locked on me. Carol was in tears. Sarah, what is going on? I looked at her, my voice softening, but my words were a bombshell. Mom, Megan, Dr. Evans. I didn't want to say anything. I wanted to leave this family, and him, with a shred of dignity. But since he's accusing me of attempted murder, I can no longer stay silent. I held up the burner phone. On this phone, I have evidence. Recordings of how Scott and Jessica plotted to transfer our marital assets while I was selling our homes to save his life. How they planned for me to get nothing in the divorce. And I paused, looking at the pale man on the bed. How they discussed using his medical condition to stage an accident and frame me for it. You're lying. You forged it, Scott rasped. We'll see about that. I turned to Dr. Evans and the ER chief, who had been drawn by the commotion. To clear my name and to find the real cause of his hyperkalemia, I request that you call the police. I want this pill box and the evidence on my phone submitted for investigation. And I demand a forensic analysis of all the medication he took today, the residue in his water glass and his blood. Police. Forensic analysis. The words detonated in the ER. The last bit of color drained from Scott's face. His eyes were wide with terror and despair. No, no police, he begged, all his earlier aggression gone. It's a family matter. Sarah, I was wrong. I was confused. We can talk at home. Talk at home? I let out a cold laugh. So you and Jessica can cook up another plan to frame me, Scott? The moment you held her hand and planned to steal everything from me, there was no home for us to go back to. I turned to Dr. Evans. Doctor, please call the police. As his physician, you know how dangerous unknown drugs are for a transplant patient. This could be considered attempted murder. I have to protect myself. Dr. Evans looked from the ashen-faced Scott to the phone and pillbox in my hands. He nodded grimly. He instructed a nurse to alert hospital security and call the police, and he added, secure the patient's water glass, any personal effects, and all medication from his room. His blood samples are to be sent for a full toxicology screen and forensic analysis. No, please. Scott's desperate cries were ignored. The police arrived. I explained the situation concisely. They took the pillbox as evidence and my burner phone, to which I provided the password and cloud backup details. Scott, as a person of interest, was questioned. But he was incoherent, only repeating that I had framed him. The police stated that a full investigation was needed, including fingerprint and chemical analysis of the pills and a forensic review of the recordings. Due to his medical state, he was not arrested, but placed under police watch at the hospital. Carol and Megan were devastated, but stood by me. Back at the house, I played them the recording from the resort, the one where Scott and Jessica discussed the proxy agreement, the money, and finding a way to orchestrate negligence with Dr. Evans's help. Hearing it, Carol broke down completely. Megan slammed her fist on the table, her face white with rage. That bastard. After everything you did for him, to plot against you like this, with that monster. Is he even human? Mom, Megan, I've known for a while, I said, my voice weary. I've been collecting evidence. The $300,000 loan that went to her company, the divorce papers that would have left me homeless, the $50,000 he sent her while I was trying to raise money for his surgery, today's accident. It was their plan to get rid of me. If I hadn't found that pill box, if I had panicked and given him one of those pills, I would never have been able to clear my name. The next day, Mr. Davies called. Sarah, I've spoken with the police. The preliminary fingerprint results are in. The pill box has Scott's prints and the prints of an unidentified female, not yours. The blood work confirms the hyperkalemia, and the recordings are being authenticated, but they look very solid. Jessica Fang has been brought in for questioning. Excellent. I breathed. This is our moment to strike, Mr. Davies said. We're filing for divorce immediately with all the evidence attached. Under this kind of criminal and legal pressure, he'll be desperate to negotiate. I didn't hesitate. Do it. The fallout was swift and brutal. Jessica, confronted with the evidence, cracked under interrogation. She confessed to the entire scheme, though she tried to pin most of the blame on Scott. She was formally arrested and charged. Scott, learning of this from his hospital bed, suffered a complete mental and physical collapse, triggering a severe acute rejection of his new heart. Mr. Davies served him with the divorce papers and our settlement demands in his hospital room with a police officer present. I was there, along with his sister, Megan. Scott, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. It's over. Our marriage ended the day you chose to betray me. I'm here to settle this. Sign the papers, agree to my terms, and we can do this through mediation. If not, we go to trial, and all of this, the fraud, the conspiracy, the attempted endangerment will be laid bare in court. You won't just lose everything. You'll go to prison. He looked at me, his eyes pleading, filled with a pathetic mixture of regret and self-pity. Sarah, when you were planning to have me framed, were you sorry then? When you were stealing from our family to build a new life with her, were you sorry then? It's too late. He looked at the thick legal document, then at my unyielding face. Defeated, he took the pen and, with a trembling hand, signed his name. His signature was a jagged, desperate scrawl. As soon as he was done, he collapsed back onto the pillows, a broken man. I took my copy of the agreement and walked out without a backward glance. Outside the hospital, I took a deep, cleansing breath of fresh air. The war was over. I had won a bitter, bloody victory. The legal proceedings dragged on, but the outcome was never in doubt. With the criminal case hanging over them, Scott's and Jessica's families were forced to cooperate. I got full custody of Leo. I recovered the stolen $300,000 and received over 80% of our total marital assets. I kept the studio apartment, which was no longer a last resort, but the foundation of my new life. A few weeks after signing the divorce papers, Scott's body gave out. The acute rejection, compounded by a severe infection, was too much. He passed away in the ICU one autumn morning. His sister called to tell me. I was quiet for a long moment. I understand, I said. You handle the arrangements. Let me know if you need anything from me. I didn't go to his funeral. There was no triumph, no sorrow, just a profound, weary emptiness. He had been my love, my partner, the father of my child, and he had tried to destroy me. Jessica was sentenced to 4 years in prison for her role in the conspiracy and for fraud. Her lavish lifestyle, funded by our money, was auctioned off to pay restitution. Life moved on. I moved with Leo into the downtown studio. I started my own small interior design consultancy working from home. It was a slow start, but it was mine. Leo started school and slowly began to heal. My mother-in-law and I maintained a polite, distant relationship. Megan remained a supportive friend. One spring evening, my new business partners and I were celebrating a successful project at a nice restaurant. On my way back from the restroom, I saw him. Dr. Evans. He was dining with an elegant woman, laughing. He saw me, and his smile faltered for a second before he gave me a polite, professional nod. I smiled back and kept walking. We were two strangers who had once navigated a treacherous river in the same boat, making a grim pact to survive. Now that we were on opposite shores, there was nothing more to be said. It was better that way. Driving home, a song came on the radio about a young girl's dreams. I had dreamed once of a love that would last a lifetime, a partnership that was a safe harbor. I learned that harbors can be hit by hurricanes, and that the person next to you can be the one to push you overboard. The dream was over. The flower had wilted. But I had a whole spring ahead of me. I no longer needed a harbor. I had become my own island. My phone buzzed. A message from Leo's teacher. He'd been praised for helping another student. A smile touched my lips. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the window. The woman staring back at me was no longer the haunted, haggard person from months ago. There were new lines around her eyes, but her gaze was clear and steady. Her life was not what she had dreamed of, but it was a life she had fought for, a life she had built from the rubble, and it was enough. The light turned green. I pressed the accelerator and drove toward the warm glow of home, where my son was waiting. The darkest night was over. I was my own light now.